What's going on, guys? It's been a minute. I think I recorded a video back in, I want to say December or January, and where I looked at it and went, "Holy crap! It's been since September, and I haven't talked to you guys." I know I don't have very big of an audience, but I did take a look at the progression of the videos that I had, and I had 8 coding bootcamp vlogs and was kind of talking through my experience at General Assembly. And I cut off right before our second project where we had just learned React and we were going to be using Airtable to do, I was going to do a cookbook app. So I've had one person ask in the comments if I dropped from the program. I've had a couple other people ask how things have gone since. Um, so here's just kind of a recap. Yes, I did finish the program in November. We built that. I built that cookbook app, and I'm kind of embarrassed of it now, going back and looking at my projects. Um, I believe it is on my portfolio. So if you are curious and want to see how crappy that is, if you're an experienced dev and you're like CRUD apps are nothing special, which is kind of where I'm at now, feel free to check it out. It's just raymondmorrison.com. I'll try to remember to leave a link in the description. Not if you don't know how to spell, that's fine to you. Um, so then Unit 3, we got heavier into, we actually learned how to build our own APIs because this was a full stack certification. So we used MongoDB Express and Node and deployed our APIs to a cluster on MongoDB Atlas and then Heroku. And for my third project, it was a group project, and I had a baby right in the middle of it. So I had 4 children before. I now have 5. I had a newborn during project week. It was, it was. We started the project on, I want to say Friday, and I helped my team build out a backend on Friday, and then Saturday afternoon, I ended up in the hospital with my girlfriend, and she was going into labor. We were there through till about Sunday, 5 or 6 o'clock, and I showed up to boot camp the following day just to check in and let everybody gush over the baby. Um, Everybody kind of was just like, "What are you doing here, man? Get out, go home, be with your family." So Monday, Tuesday, I kind of chilled with the fam, and then Wednesday I hopped in, and by then my team had already had the skeleton built out. Our third project, it was called Eco Assembly. It was like it wasn't a real functioning e-commerce app, but we had dummy products set up where it was basically the concept was you can add stuff to a cart. By the way, we didn't finish a cart because we didn't have time. It's just purchase eco-friendly products. We had them all displayed on a page, and you could sort by category, type in a filter box, simple stuff. Just another CRUD app because, as I've come to learn, boot camps pretty much just churn out like a CRUD factory. Um, I keep saying CRUD. If you are not familiar with the term CRUD, it is create, read, update, destroy, the 4 major functions that can be controlled by HTTP requests. So after our third project, we learned Ruby on Rails for Unit 4. So my final project, and I mean probably the most complex one I'd done that up to that point, um, was a blog app. I called it Whiskeypedia. It was, website for all of our whiskey and beer lovers to share the stories of the nights we can't remember, right? Um, so again, just CRUD. You could make posts and comments, and I think my big thing that I was proud of for that project was whenever you were going to edit your comments, if you made a comment, there was a typo you wanted to edit, it popped up an inline text editor, just like any of the major sites, because I was having a lot of trouble trying to get it to where I didn't want it to just scroll you to the top of the page, populate your comment in the top comment box, and then let you edit it there. I wanted the comment to turn into an editor, just like you would see on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and then have it update right there. So that was my last couple projects with GA, and now I graduated from GA in the first week of November, and I guess let's just talk about the job search. Fast forward to now, I did just receive an offer to join a team as a front end engineer full time. Company's based in Salt Lake City, Utah. If you live out there, you may have heard of OC Tanner. I guess they're mainly known for jewelry out there, but they're also the people who do the gold rings for Olympians whenever the Olympics happen. So every member of Team USA gets a ring. OC Tanner works with the Olympic Committee and donates those. Um, so that's the company that I'll be joining. But the journey to get there was long. November to now, it's been 7 months. So that's my official job search one and done. Um, but let's talk about it. I got out of GA November 8th. And by November 9th, I just so happened to come across a family member of mine who I don't really talk to. He's on my dad's side, and I don't talk to a lot of the people on that side, but I saw that he was a developer, and I didn't know that. So I requested to connect with him on LinkedIn, and I said, hey, I just graduated from a boot camp. Do you know anybody who's hiring? I wasn't looking for anything like from him, but his response was, well, yeah, we're hiring. Send me your resume. So I sent him my resume. Very following day, I had an email from a recruiter with his company. And then I had that, and I guess that was just like your typical HR screening call. So she was cool with me, and she set up a second round, which would have been another screening call, but this time with somebody who was a little bit more technical. And he thought I did fine, so they gave me a take-home assessment. Now, I believe it was on Codility, if I'm not mistaken. And, they say in the practice tests that you have a bunch of options for your languages, just pretty much any programming language you can think of. And the job description had mentioned that they would be happy if you had proficiency in at least one programming language. And there were a bunch listed. JavaScript was among them. And JavaScript is my main language because that's what GA had taught me. Pretty much JavaScript and React are like my two strongest things right now. So I went to go take the real test, and it said that the answers all had to be in Python, and I'd never touched Python. So I messaged back the recruiter, and I asked, can I take this later? Like, can I take a week to learn Python? And I'm a big proponent for Scrimba. If you've never used the Scrimba platform, I do love it quite a lot. I'm a really bad self-paced learner, and Scrimba at least keeps me engaged. The way they work their thing is that they have, it's like a video where they're talking, just like any other coding tutorial you'd see. But throughout the video, they'll say, okay, now I want you to, here's a problem, solve this problem. And whenever you click pause on the video and start to type, it converts from a video screen into an editor at whatever point it is that you pause the video. So you now can edit the code that the person was working on right there within the platform. It does have a couple limitations, but it's really great for not having to work in your own IDE or debug things. It's all handled right there on the platform. I really like it a lot. There's a lot of free courses on there. It's how I learned JavaScript, like the basics, whenever I was really struggling with for loops. I think I probably mentioned it because I saw that I have one of my coding vlogs titled JavaScript Hurts My Soul. And back then it was true. I love it now, though. And so that's how I familiarized myself with JavaScript before starting the course when I was feeling really intimidated. So I took a week. I took a Scrimba course on Python, and then I took the assessment, and the assessment was a joke. It was, I think, like 3 questions, and one of them was multiple choice. Or it might have been 10 questions, and 3 of them were programming, the rest were multiple choice. And the programming ones were, here's a function. We want it to take the sum of all of the arguments and return the sum. So we don't know how many arguments are going to be passed in. They're guaranteed to be numbers, and you need to return the sum of all of them. And I had already learned everything I needed. I could have just Googled the syntax on how to do that. And so I just was like, okay, well, return sum of all args. It really wasn't hard. I don't remember the exact syntax for it now because I haven't used Python since, but not hard. The second problem was, here's a function. We've already written the code for you, and we put question marks. It was given 2 arguments, return which one is larger. And they had two if statements, and it was just question mark greater than question mark, and you had to choose whether number one or number two would be on the left or the right side of that question mark, and to make the function work properly. Didn't need to know Python to do that either, and I think those were the only two programming questions. The rest were multiple choice, and I think I got 7 out of 10 of those right. So that was fine. They were like, okay, cool, let's have you do a panel interview with three senior engineers and three members of upper management. I believe the VP of engineering, the hiring manager, and a team lead. Or maybe the department head of somewhere else. I feel like there were two really upper management people, and then the hiring manager. Um, and it was great. It was like an hour and a half or an hour, something like that. We went over. I had the VP like gasping for breath, like laughing his ass off, and it's that was like Q4. That was like 2 days before Christmas. Everybody's out of office. The decision makers are gone, but like it went really well. And I was thinking like, holy shit, did I just get an interview the day after I graduated boot camp and then just get a job? Like this has to be some kind of record. I know it's not. I know people have not interviews. They have offers before graduation sometimes, but generally those are people who have some experience in the industry before going into it, not people like me who are switching from food service or manufacturing, other career fields where they took a boot camp to transition in. So, I kicked back my feet and relaxed. It was the end of the year. I had been working hard for a few months. I thought the check was in the mail, man. And to anybody who's in a situation like this where they think things are going well, let me just tell you now, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Just keep at it. Keep interviewing with people until there's an offer letter in your hand. Once there is an offer letter in your hand, and you still have an interview process ongoing with someone else, tell them you have an offer already and that you're considering taking it. So if they want to, have you as a candidate, they're going to need to, get moving. Leverage that. Don't be like me and be lazy because you think your job search is over. It was arrogant, and I shouldn't have done it because I had to wait until the second week of January. Second week of January, I finally got an email. They put a hiring freeze on the role. They weren't hiring anybody for it anymore, and I had stopped applying to places really. So, like, while you're continuously applying, you continuously have a pipeline of things in the works, and the timings are set. If you put in an application, you might receive a call in a week and a half, which is fine because you're always a week and a half behind as far as that goes. But if you stop for a week, then there will be a dead week. So, I got back to applying. Admittedly, I didn't feel great. And I had a couple other interviews which were similar. I was being told in almost every interview process that I went through that, and this is almost verbatim, I would get the feedback after a second or third round interview, and it would be, hey, we love talking to you, and here's the words: we think you would be a great culture fit, but we're just looking for someone with a little bit more experience. I heard things like, you have a bright career ahead of you. You did really well, etc. But I mean, the ones that really stuck with me, really got under my skin, were like, we think you're really awesome, and we think you have a bright career ahead of you. You'd be a wonderful culture fit, but we're just looking for someone with a little more experience. And from where I was standing, it's like, you can see my experience level on the resume. You have a screening call with me, and I'm super upfront and candid. I don't try to bullshit interviewers or HR people into giving me interviews that I don't think that I can pass. I am very candid up front that I'm a little bit insecure in my skills because I'm so new and I don't know what I don't know. And that vulnerability is something that I'm upfront about because I don't want to go anywhere where that's going to be a problem. I'm going to be shooting myself in the foot if I do. So for people to bring me through a screening call knowing this and knowing where I'm at, and put me in front of their decision makers, and their decision makers to say, well, we just need him to have a bit more experience. It just feels like we're wasting everybody's time. And I've posted about this on LinkedIn in recent weeks, and I've been slammed with some criticism from people who are saying things like, you should just be grateful you got the interview. A lot of people are out there not getting interviews at all. Somebody said, junior devs are like almost demanding that someone gives them a chance, and would you rather they didn't give you a chance? And to me, that one also is just like, yes, I hear people all the time talking about, I just need someone to give me a chance, but they don't mean an interview. They mean, give me a job, give me a chance to prove my value, not give me a chance to try and convince you that I'm valuable. I've had, dozens of interviews over the last few months, and I wouldn't say any of them were a chance. I mean, sure, they gave me a chance to prove myself in an interview, but a lot of them said that they loved me and didn't extend offers at all. A lot of them also just brought me into second or third rounds and then either issued a rejection and refused to give feedback, probably for legal reasons. They don't want to open themselves up to lawsuits, so they just kind of have to say, sorry, we're not moving forward with you at this time, and that just is what it is. Um, after all of January and February, I decided to create an Upwork profile. After a couple weeks, I did get a gig on there. Um, it wasn't anything crazy, but it gets something on my resume. I worked it for 2 or 3 weeks, and did very little programming. It was a cool guy, but he was kind of a freelancer in his own right, and was kind of a procrastinator, self-admitted, and thought that paying somebody to kind of pair program with him or do like I screen shared. He screen shared with me, and I took control of his screen. Is the way it worked, and I just typed what he told me to. He figured if he's paying someone, he'd give more of a shit, and then he'd get more done. That was the philosophy, and so that's what we did. Um, so that was a few weeks, and I mean, it was like 20, $25 an hour, so it gave me something to work with because we were working like 10 hours a week. So it put something in my bank account in order for me to, pay my car payment, which was nice at the time because it was before tax returns came back. I mentioned I have a bunch of kids. Tax returns were massive. I was able to immediately wipe all the debts that I'd accrued over the several months of my job switch. But then I finally, through the power of LinkedIn networking, I had a buddy message me from LinkedIn saying, hey, I was approached for a contract. I don't have time for it. Can I refer you? And I'm like, well, yes, absolutely. So client reaches out to me. We hit it off. Again, very upfront about my experience. He remembers what it was like whenever he was getting started. So he, he was excited to have the chance to give somebody some experience. And so off to the races. It was a SaaS product for a company that does process audits for manufacturers. They had an existing product where basically log in and see your audit schedule. Say and I come from a car parts manufacturer for my last job, so we'll use that. So I worked for a car parts manufacturer. They did extrusion. It was rubber, the seals for the doors and hoods and sunroofs, that kind of thing. So let's say on line one, we're running 540s today, and once every hour and a half, 540s need a check. So we need to check the size of the product, the density of the product, making sure that it's being cut to the right length, making sure our packaging is good. And so there will be an audit for that. There will be, in my company, we just did paperwork where we print off a sheet, and you had to fill out this questionnaire every so often. Maybe it's once an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. There were multiple audits for any given part, and they had to be done at certain intervals. Now, this company handles stuff like that. They would, you make an audit for that particular part. You can log in on your tablet and then perform the audit, and it handles all the scheduling as well. You can add auditors and add facilities and stuff. That's the general overview. So they wanted to update it to React TypeScript. They wanted to use Bootstrap. I pushed them to Material UI. They were fine with it. So I picked up a full-time freelance contract in the last week of February for $40 an hour. So this is the point in the video where I say, if you're thinking about switching to a career, at my factory job, I made 17.25. It was about 35 grand a year. Um, I took the boot camp. I struggled for a few months to find a job, and then I hit a freelance contract making more than double what I used to make. Overall, best thing that ever could have happened to me, because if I were to work the full-time hours at that point, it's like 80K a year. Um, I'm a procrastinator. I'm lazy. We've talked about this. This is the reason that I took a boot camp in the first place. So, um, I lost my words there for a minute. For me, I worked about 25 hours a week. Tomorrow's my last day freelancing, actually. I stayed on the contract till the last minute just to keep the income rolling. So they wanted to do React, TypeScript, Material UI, MUI 5, not 4, just in case anybody's familiar with it and is curious. So I've really been leveling up over the past few months as I've been building this from scratch. I've been the sole front-end dev on the project. We had some issues with our back-end guy for a couple months. He's kind of scatterbrained, just didn't really deliver anything. So I made a whole bunch of stuff with dummy data. If you're familiar with TypeScript at all, I was putting any for all of my type checkers because it was just dummy objects and I had no idea what the actual API calls would look like. Plus, the back end of the application was ASP.NET Core. It's in C#. I don't know C#, and he doesn't have the budget to just let me build 2 weeks of learning C#. So, just kind of stuck with what I know. And so we've had some miscommunication issues for that reason, because the guy who's employing me doesn't know React and I don't know C#. So he's coming from a back-end world, I'm coming from a front-end world. He doesn't understand what is React and what isn't sometimes. Like, there have been some issues where, I mean, in JavaScript, 1 plus 1 still equals 2, but because I'm using React, he might say, I don't know how to explain this to you in React terms when all I need is 1 plus 1 equals 2, and that's universal. So that's been an issue sometimes. But finally, after going through some more interview processes, I stopped actively applying once I got the freelance work because my bills were paid. That, and I went on vacation in April with my kids. We went to Disney World, and so I wasn't actively applying, but I was still passively applying. And what I mean by that is I was no longer like sitting there looking at job boards and being like, okay, this one, putting in, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 applications a week. Instead, anytime I'd get an alert for something that looked good in my LinkedIn jobs alerts, I had some custom ones set up. Highly recommend you do that. Be as picky as you want because people post all the time. Set up several. And I really am going to emphasize this. I had one job alert that was set to like everything that I could possibly want. I just set it to like 80K plus, full remote, these benefits, this title, this level for a company in this sector, whatever. And so rather than the spam alerts you get from LinkedIn where they're like 30 new jobs a week, 30 plus, I would get alerts that would be like, hey, 4 new jobs match your alert. And A, it's a lot more manageable. And B, it's pretty much only what I want. Plus, LinkedIn has a flaw. If they don't list an experience level, it just gives it to you. So you might say you want entry level, but somebody posts a senior level position. It says senior in the title, but they might have accidentally checked entry level, like in the drop down menu when they posted it, or didn't assign a level at all, so it gives it to you. So you might get 6 results, and 2 of them are seniors, so you really have 4. And that's all handled. In any case, I was just working by the start of March and just applying to anything interesting that came across my desk. I was still having recruiters hit me up on LinkedIn, so I had plenty of screening calls. But I just wasn't looking for proposals on Upwork, and I wasn't applying to everything under the sun. Finally, I was having some trouble with the project because of the issues that I mentioned with the kind of miscommunication between front and back end. I was having trouble making a login request, and I could log in, but then I couldn't find what variable it was coming from the back end that I needed to pass in as a bearer token for the rest of my API calls. And I spent hours looking for this. And so, I took to LinkedIn. I was like, can somebody help me who knows ASP.NET, who can help me figure out what the fuck is going on here? Um, and a buddy of mine who I'd talked to once or twice on LinkedIn prior to that, he messaged me saying he'd be happy to help. And he sat with me in a Zoom call for, I had a free plan, so 5 straight Zooms of 40 minutes each. So we were there for over 3 hours, and he just helped me look through the application, was giving me suggestions and trying to debug it with me. And at the end of it, we were just sitting there talking kind of about where we're at and his job and what he does. And at that point, I remembered that he had referred me to apply to his company before, and I didn't hear back. So I hopped on the careers page while we were on the call, and then I saw a front end position, and front end is my strength, um, because we did a lot more work with React than anything else at GA, and that kind of um, that became what I focused on after I got out. I'm a big fan of the depth first approach as opposed to breadth first. Um, just really trying to focus on one thing, and for me, that's JavaScript, React, and I mean, obviously, CSS comes along with it, because you need to be able to as a front end dev. But I applied for the front end position. I screen shared while I did it. He, told me a few things, like I asked what I should post for my salary band, um, and had him proofread my little cover letter statement. Um, anyway, he let me put his name on it, and then I got a call for an interview. I had my interview. It was just one interview, um, and I don't even feel like it went that well. Like, we spent about 45 minutes talking, and that part was fine. But then they used the VS Code live share extension, which I'd never used before. But the guy who was hosting it had some connection issues, and the server was slow. So I think I lost probably 10 to 15 minutes out of my remaining 45 just to tech issues. And then the first thing they had me do was like make an API call, just a GET request, and then render a list to a page with a link and a title. And then whenever you click the title, it would go to the thing. And then they had me add a search box, and I got a little tripped up because usually what I would do is set a piece of state for the array, but it was paginated, so it's a little different. So instead, they wanted me to make it so that whenever you hit enter on the search box, it would add a query param, and I hadn't really used too much in the way of query params for my API requests. Um, so I kind of read through the documentation on that and talked it out with them, and then I got that working. And then we ran out of time. We hit the hour-and-a-half limit, and there were 5 total bullet points that I was supposed to do. I made it through 3 of them, and they were just like, okay, gotta go. See ya. No time for me to ask my questions that I would normally ask or anything like that. And I really just didn't feel like it went well. Like, I didn't get the vibe at the end. And they just kept telling me whenever they were asking questions, oh, we're just checking to see where you're at. But I couldn't get the vibe as to whether where I was at was good or bad. And then I got told, I mean, later that night, I got emails from the hiring manager. Hey, I forgot to ask, what are your preferred hours? And I'm trying to suss out where I'm at and be polite and be like, hey, I didn't get to ask any questions, so I'm just like wanted to know where I stand. I couldn't really get a read on you guys, if I'm being honest. And so I just kind of wanted to know where I was at. Um, and he basically just went, oh yeah, no, for where you're at in your journey, it was a great interview. And so I was just like, what the fuck? He told me that they had a few more employee referrals to interview, and that it was a holiday weekend as well. It was Memorial Day. Memorial Day in May? I think it is. Um, so he wouldn't probably know anything till middle of the next week. And so that was a Tuesday I interviewed, and then the following Tuesday I got an email saying, "Hey, do you have some time to talk today?" And I genuinely thought, like, the way it was phrased, that like I'd offended them so badly that they were giving me a courtesy call to tell me how bad I'd fucked up, just like as a come to Jesus moment so that I wouldn't continue behaving the way I was behaving in further interviews or something. Like the imposter syndrome at that point was getting that bad. And I got to the point where I was just kind of like mind numbingly. I apply for something, I don't expect to hear back. If I do hear back, I expect to think that it went well, but get rejected. If I get a second round, I expect that to go well too. Same deal. I expect to get a rejection for some reason. And that apparently wasn't that. What it was a verbal offer phone call for later in the day, to which I was overjoyed. Um, I mean, and the phone call took like 20 minutes because I think he's used to candidates having competing offers and wanting to negotiate and whatnot. And I told them right up front that if I were to be offered 80,000 a year today, I would just take it. No questions asked. My unicorn number is 80 and up, and I won't bother trying to negotiate with you. And I mean, the base salary is a couple grand under that, but with bonuses, it puts me over, and their bonuses are pretty much guaranteed as long as you're not being a dumb shit. And honestly, it seems to me that if you're at the point where you're not going to get your bonus, you're at the point where you're going to get let go, and those stories don't really come out. Everybody on the team I've talked to so far has been like, it's a 10% bonus on your salary, split into two portions, once every 6 months, and so you get 5% of your salary every 6 months as a bonus, and they range a percentage on that too. So 100% of your bonus would be your 5%. You could get 70% for performing subpar, but that's the lowest they even publicize, even in my offer letter. So I don't think they go under that. And you could get up to 140%. But I just had my connection from the inside tell me that his bonus, the bonuses come in June and December. So we're on one right now. He's telling me that his next paycheck, he got 180% of his bonus instead of 140, which is just nuts. So, that being said, a couple weeks ago, I accepted a verbal offer. They had an official offer letter to me by the end of the day. Following day, I went and took a drug test locally. My background check was already submitted the day prior. And so that was Wednesday that I took my drug test. By Monday, I got the email saying we're officially official, and I got to post on LinkedIn, happy hip hooray, I got a new position. Woo! And so that's great. Right now, I'm waiting for my company laptop to come in the mail. My start date is Monday, and I guess if I continue doing the YouTube thing, which I should, I should sit down and take some time. It'd be beneficial for me and for anybody else who gives a crap. Maybe I can share these videos on LinkedIn. I'm a little embarrassed looking back at my previous videos, not at my skill level, because everybody has to start somewhere, but like, I'm a very candid person, and I think that I can come off pretty harsh sometimes. And I haven't gone back and rewatched my first few vlogs in their entirety. Just number 8. I went back and watched like the first 5-6 minutes of it, and I recalled how frustrated I was getting with my classmates in my first couple of weeks, because that was week 3 out of a 12-week program, and I was already frustrated. I'm used to being one of the smarter people in the room, and that's not just arrogance or tooting my own horn. It just is what it is. In high school, I was never really challenged. I made honor roll without studying. I got a 32 on the ACT without prepping. I've just always had academics come easily. And then once I got out of high school, I didn't do it anymore. And so I've always been bored. So, like, in food service jobs, I'm usually, like, just used to being the most observant and analytical person in the room, and catching on to the most and improving the most and being the fastest or being the best. And it just is what it is. So, I come into boot camp, and I was not there. I mean, there are at least 3 people in my cohort who, right off the top of my head, I think are better than me, and a couple of them are pretty humble about it. And they were great. And that the upper, like, 30% of that class was fine. There's 30 people in that class, and I mean, still, I think about 10 of them were questionable. I don't know why they spent the money to do this with as much difficulty as they were having. But it's kind of embarrassing to me to like put this on another platform and have people go back and see maybe I was bad mouthing my classmates. I do think at the time I probably tried to just make it like this is what it is, and I'm not really trying to shit on people. This is just how it's going. But I haven't rewatched it to for sure know, and that's got me a little weirded out. So like I'd want to post this YouTube channel on LinkedIn if I started to grow it. But also, like, do I delete those earlier videos? That's the question. Um, I believe in being pretty blunt, upfront, honest, and I don't think anybody's going to take the time to go back and watch hours of my old content, but they might. And I think that part of the reason I started doing this um, was because I didn't see any resources out there that were 100% honest about their bootcamp experience either. And the last thing I want is for people to who could have watched my earlier videos and thought, okay, well, now I know that there's going to be a skill disparity going into these things, and maybe they don't screen as well as they should, or they definitely don't categorize out and say, okay, you got 40% on the entrance exam, you got a 70, we're putting you in separate cohorts. They don't do any of that. So just knowing what you're in for. Um, to anybody who has happened to see those earlier videos and maybe was offended, or maybe you are a former classmate of mine, you wonder if I'm talking about you. Um, just know that my intent isn't to shame you or to just talk shit all day. That isn't it at all. Um, but I was paying more than 20 grand for the opportunity to learn things that were going to change my life and start my career. And I felt like I was being hindered by all of the interruptions for stupid questions. And the comeback really could be, well, Ray, you're a bit of a class clown. You had some interruptions, like just to fuck around, and I will take that. That's valid. But at the same time, just being stopped for a syntax error every 5 fucking minutes was driving me up a wall. And I for sure was messaging some of my other classmates in Slack, making fun of people or just like venting about the stupidity of some of the things that were going on. No names mentioned. It just is what it is. So if your feelings are hurt, I apologize, but it is what it is. Um, okay, guys. That being said, I'm looking at the timer on the video. We're already at 37 minutes. I don't think anybody's watching this thing from start to finish. But if you did, I thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me drone on for more than half an hour about my life and my experiences. And I don't know, put the word pineapple in the comments if you got this far, because if you did, I kind of owe you a one-on-one or something. If you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, I believe my LinkedIn URL is just rlmorrison74. So that would be http slash or colon slash slash linkedin.com/in/rlmorrison74. Feel free to connect with me, message me there. You can always catch me there. If you have any questions about your upcoming boot camp, you're looking to be a career switcher just like me, or you want to know more about anything in the dev world that I've experienced in the last nearly a year, feel free to reach out. I'm always open to new connections, new DMs, and growing my audience. So, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.